Good day, my friends. As we all know, Final Fantasy XIV has never been afraid to change the formula of certain jobs and abilities over the course of its life. Some jobs feel like they get major overhauls almost every expansion, making them look new and fresh every couple of years. But deep down, this has created a strange divide within the community. On one side, you've the players that love these changes, as it keeps the material, like the playable jobs, from getting too samey or stale. On the other side, you've players that are confused or upset, annoyed that their once favorite job now plays like something completely different. For example, one of the biggest early changes to a job would be Machinist, back when it was originally launched in Heavensward. Eventually, its base concept was completely replaced by a new system, which would receive additional changes in the future. But instead of abandoning the original job mechanics, they instead changed them into what would later become known as Dancer within Shadowbringers. However, then you have recent examples like that of Summoner, who has seen a tremendous amount of change within Endwalker. But it's here that you begin to see just as many people loving the changes as you have people hating it. Although, there's one job in Final Fantasy XIV that has changed remarkably little and has only been improved upon as the game has been moved into the future. I, of course, am talking about the only limited job in Final Fantasy XIV, Blue Mage. But what does this have to do with the jobs in 14? Especially since Blue Mage is limited and can't be brought into standard content. The answer is quite a lot, actually, as it defies everything that all the other jobs in this game stand for. While the current jobs are always at the mercy of whatever patch or expansion changes them, Blue Mage has never lost its creative versatility, not even once. And yet, it turns out more people enjoy Blue Mage despite its limitations. So, let's talk about that, and how Blue Mage's unique design is not as crazy as you think. A quick history lesson for you. Blue Mage is a reoccurring job in the Final Fantasy franchise that stretches as far back as Final Fantasy V, and its concept has existed in almost every Final Fantasy game since then. Sure, it's not as old and well known as White and Black Mage, but Blue Mage is no slouch, and is definitely a veteran of the franchise. But what makes a Blue Mage? These spellcasters are individuals that somehow learn, mimic, or even steal the abilities of monsters and sometimes that of other people. A Blue Mage doesn't create their own spells. Instead, they become an empty vessel that can eventually hold dozens if not hundreds of unique talents and skills from just as many unique monsters and animals. At face value, this might seem like a joke, as all they're doing is copying the powers of other things. But that's what makes blue magic so powerful. Indeed, the true power of a Blue Mage is its versatility. Defensive skills, offensive attacks, and healing abilities are all things a Blue Mage can have at their disposal at any time. If an enemy is weak to a certain skill or element, then a Blue Mage likely has what their opponent doesn't want used against them. So, while blue magic will never be as intimidating as black magic when it comes to raw power, its ability to adapt to any environment makes up for that in spades. Now that you know the history of blue magic within the franchise, I hope it's easier to see why there are so many fans of it despite the fact that it's a limited job. It has a rich history, and during the heydays of Final Fantasy XI, Blue Mage was well loved by those who mained it. But I'm not just pulling random opinions out of thin air. To get a limited estimate of the community's opinion of Blue Mage, I held 3 polls in different locations to get a general idea of people's thoughts. One poll was on YouTube, the second was on Twitter, and the third was from random people in the game itself. Even though this was a really quick poll, I noticed something surprising. Between all 3 investigations, there were 2 major similarities between each of them. Mainly, that more than half of the players really enjoyed, if not loved, Blue Mage, and the people that outright hated it were in the gross minority. Not only that, people visibly wished there was more content involving it, if not made a regular job. So a big thank you to everyone who was involved and helped me collect this data. But why did I go out of my way to get this information? Mostly to prove a point. The point that most players want to try something completely different more often than you'd expect, and as such, Blue Mage was a breath of fresh air. Despite the core of Blue Mage never having changed since its conception, most players still enjoy it. And the common theme between all these people seems to be the Blue Mage's namesake: versatility. You see, Final Fantasy XIV is a surprisingly rigid game when placed under a lens, since most experiences are in fact standardized. A warrior will ultimately play the same way as every other warrior. Every dungeon run is the same trash pulls and bosses over and over. And even endgame material like Savage and Extreme content are just elaborate dances. So long as you execute the steps of that dance properly, you'll win. But the dance will, for the most part, be the same every single time. Now, this streamlining of content isn't necessarily a bad thing, as it allows all sorts of different players to experience all sorts of material together. But Blue Mage defied this system and was loved for it. But why? First of all, your abilities are unique to you. You don't gain spells by leveling up like every other job. You have to go find them. And it never matters what order you go get them in either. You can start out with the easy spells on the world map, or start with the hard spells if you wanted to water cannon primals to death. Totally up to you. Not only that, but whatever spells are on your hotbar are personal to you as well. With there currently being 104 spells and 24 you can slot at any time, there are hundreds of unique combinations. Now, are some spells better than others? Yes. But the beautiful thing about Blue Mage is that you really don't need a meta to have fun. The reason for this being that Blue Mage spells are uniquely overpowered in their own right, and you don't really need a meta to demolish enemies. So right out of the box, Blue Mage isn't like any other job. One person I questioned even went as far as to say that Blue Mage reminded them of wizards from Dungeons & Dragons, since you've got your little spell book and only a certain amount of spells can be prepared at any given time. And in that regard, they weren't completely wrong. So already, Blue Mage is offering players unique experiences in a way that no other job can. And the more unique something is, the more it stands out. The more memorable it becomes. To further drive home this point, we have the Mast Carnival. The carnival is essentially a set of unique trials that only you can participate in. These can range from very simple fights to one-on-one battles that will challenge your skill as a player. Most of these fights can be very easy or very hard based on the spells you choose to take in. While some players complained these fights were too difficult, even more players said that they loved the challenge. However, once again, there was a singular common theme. Almost all of those players disliked the few fights that demanded you use specific abilities in very specific ways in order to win. Which makes sense. From the word go, Blue Mage was offering everyone a unique way to play with hundreds of options in front of you. So for the Mast Carnival to suddenly say you must play a certain way in order to proceed to the next challenge, it was stealing that sense of versatility away. It was making Blue Mage like every other job. This love of the unique is shared with other achievements that encourage players to take on difficult material like the Binding Coils of Bahamut with only Blue Mages in your party. While some mages must try to tank and heal, all abilities after that is totally on the players and party. And I never thought I'd see Bahamut's last 1% of HP get removed by players spitting fish at him. That's an L, Bahamut. That's an L. But these unique fights and silly approaches to material wouldn't be possible if Blue Mage was a regular job like all the others. In order for Blue Mage to become standardized, one of two things would need to happen. Option 1. The jobs in Final Fantasy XIV would need to take a page out of Blue Mage's book and become more versatile, which is next to impossible given how the developers have visibly stepped as far away from that as they can over the years, meaning that the other option is the only one available. The option that states that Blue Mage would need to be shackled to the same rigid system that every other job is currently in, meaning that everyone learns the same blue spells at the same levels, and that all Blue Mages would ultimately play the exact same way. Now, to some people that would be just fine. However, it wouldn't be the Blue Mage people currently play. it wouldn't be the job that more than half the people I questioned loved. You don't want Blue Mage to be a regular job. At least, not yet. If the developers could find a way to keep Blue Mage's versatility intact while also allowing it to play in modern material, I think people would find a reason to rejoice. But that would be a lot of work, possibly too much work given how Final Fantasy XIV is currently structured. So, while Blue Mage might be a limited job and a meme to most people, the players still love it despite all of that. Because it's a job that offers something that no other can. An entirely unique player experience that breaks away from everything the rest of the game stands for. And if they choose to create more content for it, I know I'll be amongst the first in line to try it out. Thank you all for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe and share this with your fellow adventurers? With your help, I'll try to reach out even further and bring even greater stories to you. Although, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my biggest contributors. A grand thank you to Rovakis, Potato, Burn My Pancakes, The Yellow Couch, Papaya Cyan, Sage Mouse, Volvalis Oma, Cizane, Azeri, and Cat, with an additional nod to the scholarships on screen. Links to things like my Twitter and that of my channel artist Caddy can be found in the description. Thank you all for your viewership as well as your support, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Class dismissed.